and I haven't given up. I'm sure that, she just needed that. That's what I think. She just needed that. And there we are, live on YouTube. And good morning, everybody. You're here with Bruce Rawles, Lynn Johnson, and the host of Myriad Friends in ACIM Gather, represented by Deb. And and we're reading a Symphony of Love by well, it's a story of Ken Wapnick. It's his writings, it's his poetry.
I have the the
No,
f- the,
please.
the page in front of me. I like to read what it says on the title page, or was that it's not the copyright page, but the one right before that. When you open the book, even though I've got the digital edition, it's A Symphony of Love: Selections of Dr. Kenneth Wapnick's writings, autobiographies, poetry, short stories, and articles. So we're going to get a smorgasbord of Ken's writing here, and it's edited by Gloria Wapnick and put out by the Foundation for A Course in Miracles,
A
a sister
smorgasbord
organization to the Foundation for Inner Peace. Yeah.
at Katz's Deli for all right. So thank you, Bruce, for that. And I need to get these things put into the different places so people can read and know what this is. Because that is one thing a member was asking. What are all these books you guys are reading? Where do I find them?
Actually, I have a list of them on a recent blog post on acimblog.com. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to go there, just look for. Let me find it real quick. I'll put it in the chat. How's that make it easy for people? Because when we started the Symphony of Love, I thought, well, it's time for. I mean, I've put so few, shamefully few posts about what we're doing on Saturday mornings. And I know you know carried the the vast majority of the responsibility of putting that out there and all the different platforms. And thank you for that, Lynn. So anyway, the I'll put the link in the chat here, and I'll just read what it says out loud for people who are listening to the replay. It's acmblog.com/ and then all the words basically interspersed with hyphens, and it's uh, A Symphony of Love, ACIM Gather Conversations with Lynn Johnson and Bruce Rawls. And in that blog post, there's all the things that you and I have been doing for over a decade. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So anyway, let's see.
Oh my
I
God.
think the first one was uh, 2012, I think is, oh, that's when I started doing some monologues on ACM Gather, and then quickly realized it was a lot more fun to have a conversation with you. So that's I guess it was, well, I guess it's been almost a decade, but coming up on a decade, in April, looks like.
Yeah.
April
I have a quick
17th, it says, at least in terms of my records of when I last noted recordings and on my calendar. So, so coming up in about 3 months, will be our 10-year anniversary of doing this show together. So that's pretty cool.
and is that what they call decade dance? Decade. Is
Well,
that-
when I realized, you know, the course's admonition to resign now as your own teacher for you were badly taught. Well, there's the dunce part. Yeah, our egos are all pretty foolish, but forgivable, right? Right.
oh my
We're just
gosh.
afraid of love, so that's a forgivable non-crime.
It is absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank God. Thank God that that's the situation because otherwise we would be uh, quite confused. And
Yeah. Yeah.
not that we're not. I mean, I'm still pretty confused about a lot
Well,
of
and
stuff.
I think that's a really helpful perspective, isn't it? Because if we can remember that when you're looking back on a decade or several decades and realizing, gosh, I was so clueless back then, and you're really, if you extrapolate that and extend that forward, it's like, gee, I'm still clueless now relative to what I'm likely to be if I keep with this practice of forgiveness, right? And
That's right. That's
revealing
right.
how much I don't know, and there's wasn't one of those wise sayings. It's like, I think was this Socrates was quote of saying that the only thing he was uh, said was that he knew that he didn't know, something like that. There's some quote from Socrates, I think, from that, like that. The only thing he knew is that he didn't know.
which is
Yeah.
the only thing you can know in this world.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean, because
don't know what anything is for.
right. And knowledge, if you look at Ken Wapnick's metaphysical chart, is above the line, meaning it's a pure non-dual teaching, which is what the course really is, even though it has to use, like tying into what Deb was saying in the conversation I got the tail end of, um, even though the course has to use dualistic language because that's all we have here. We don't have a non-dualistic language because there's no such thing. And words are symbols of symbols, as the course points out. So they're basically, at best, reflective of reflected reflections of right-minded ideas, right? So
Yeah.
I
So
want to add the only non-dualistic language would be silence.
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. Or as we would perceive it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because who is there to speak and who is there to be spoken to? That I mean,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Exactly.
so Bruce, I guess I think it looks like I've read this stuff already, but tell me where we are in
Oh,
your
okay. I have where you were right where you're at there. That's where we should pick
okay,
up. Yeah. Should I just start there with the last vestige?
sure,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And if you read
So,
along, well, I try to get my other stuff up and running,
oh,
then
sure, sure. I'll do that. Yeah, be happy to. Okay. So last week we left off on in Lynn's digital version, page 45 of 455. So we're about 11% through, and I'm at the same page 58 of 497. So depending on how much you shrink or expand the width of your digital version, it's going to be a few hundred pages. And we're about 11% through. So I'll just pick up where we left off. And Ken says, the last vestige of my tutelage under Beethoven, which is his inspiration, his muse at the time, or any artist, now disappeared. It was now the life of a monk, one who lived with God at his life's center. That supplied the example for what my life should be, and perhaps to the form my life would now take. For as I continued to read, especially Merton's descriptions of Trappist life, um, I saw the striking parallels between my regiment and disciplined life of the past 2 years and that of the Trappists. That life was the only one which made any sense to me, and perhaps I thought the quote crisis unquote was the means whereby I might become a monk. But it all seemed so far removed from my current life's reality that I don't think I seriously considered actually becoming a monk. Besides, I was Jewish and I did not know of any Jewish monasteries. I think we did read that paragraph, so a little bit of
that's
overlap there. Yeah, that's
that's
pretty
okay.
funny. Yeah, what's that?
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it was now sometime in June, and though I was now feeling more spiritually alive, the crisis was far from over. I still knew I could no longer return to my old style of life, and the new had not yet emerged, and so I continued to eat, sleep, and walk. I could not understand why I was not feeling better, since obviously my monastic interest was real and Merton was connecting to me. I very badly wanted to speak with someone who could help me, but did not know to whom to go. Psychologists are usually not the ones to speak to regarding God or spiritual matters, and I knew of no clergy to whom I could speak. I had attempted several months before to contact 3 men whom I respected and whom I felt might be helpful, but 2 never answered my letters, and the third turned out not to be helpful in the way I needed. I therefore resigned myself to continuing alone. Now, once again, I felt strongly the need to speak with someone about my spiritual life, and I thought if any people would understand what was happening to me, it would be the monks at Gethsemane. It's with an ending with an I, letter I, Merton's monastery. I think that was in Tennessee somewhere, Kentucky, one of those places back east, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I did not know if it were possible to visit, and if so, how to go about it. But I finally was able to overcome my hesitancies and anxiety, and I wrote to them. I remember mailing it at the main post office in Poughkeepsie, New York, over the 4th of July weekend, and walking the 2 miles, feeling as if I were on a kind of pilgrimage. It felt not only like the right thing to do, but an important next step along whatever path it was that I was on. A response came shortly, and we arranged that I would come the week of August 14th and stay for 5 days. I was elated, for I felt the darkness beginning to lift. I'm just going to pause there and um, comment on what Ken is describing in his journey. I was thinking just the idea that he made a commitment to move in the direction of what he thought would bring him peace. I mean, it's not just the intention, but it's the willingness to follow those promptings. I think this what leads us out of the darkness, isn't it? That's your cue, Lynn, if you had something to say.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was looking for,
You're
no,
still doing
yeah.
tech stuff? Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, but you're
Oh, okay.
exactly right. And this is what, I mean, all right. So, when we first started this morning, I was talking about someone who had been here and who, kind of wandered in, didn't know what we were doing, didn't know what we were about. And I was very invested in helping them to understand because I really, I felt like they were led here,
Hmm.
but it was, excuse me, not up to me to to either lead them or to teach them or to give them anything. They already had their prompt from the Holy Spirit. And I'm sure these monks here at this Gethsemane are thinking, well, here's some Jewish dude who wants to come out here and hang out. And, maybe he'll become a monk. Maybe he'll become a Catholic. I don't know what they were thinking. But, I mean, it's that desire for the joining that is the reality of the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, I was sad and felt um kind of disappointed and oh yay, there that is open now. Yeah, I think we're broadcasting on Pal Talk and on the radio. Oh no, I have to open the radio too. I forgot to turn that back on. But it's not up to us. None of it is up to us. We're just here to be the vessels and not to be the drivers and the we're not the engine and the motor. We are just the vessels here. And that being the case, um, there's no reason for me to jump up in the front seat and take over the wheel. Someone's already driving. So, so all of my desire for, us to go here and go there, that's me. And it's not the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is telling me, get the hell out of the driver's seat. You don't even know how to drive. And yet you're trying to take over. And that's what I have to recognize. Oh, I don't even know how to drive. Why am I trying to take over? Anyway, so yeah, let's see.
As you're thinking about your metaphor of driving, it occurred to me that because we're so used to traveling horizontally, metaphorically, even when we're flying or in an elevator or whatever, mountain climbing. Uh, pick your physical metaphor. The mental metaphor that the course uses is the horizontal and vertical. Being horizontal being the ego's constant shifting and metamorphosing um, into different forms to keep us endlessly lured to seek a solution in the world. And so it uses the horizontal metaphor of all that there, someday I'll be enough. Someday I'll be peaceful. Someday the world will work for me. Someday yada yada. And it's always the someday isle, the mythical island in the unknown ocean that we're striving for. And yet um, the Holy Spirit's curriculum is vertical. It just says, "Hey, let me pull you up into my starship with the mental tractor beam and above the battleground of duality, and let's look at this together and see that there's nothing in the world that's going to make you happy, but you can use everything in the world as the launch pad for forgiveness to blast off above the war uh, war-torn battlefield of the ego's strife and polarization and upset, and see that there's another perspective where kindness and forgiveness is always merited and always justifiable because nothing happened and the separation is a misunderstanding. It's only that when we have chosen to go out of our way to believe that we're separate, that we could have any kind of conflict in our mind.
Yes, yes, yes. Exactly. And as you're speaking and I'm looking at this metaphor, I'm thinking about thing that happened to me when I must have been about maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I read a story about uh the hair on the moon. Like there's a rabbit that lives on the moon, or that you can see it if you look the right way. It looks like a rabbit.
Okay.
It's a Chinese, or it's an Asian story, an Asian thought. And I think that's why the hair is one of their uh uh Chinese uh horoscope items anyway. uh and that from the moon the hair can see everything that's happening. And I
Ah.
think I must have read that story. I must have had a dream. It seemed like a vision when I was a little kid, but in the vision I was on the moon, and I was looking at the world, and I could see all the people, I could see everything. And I what I wanted was to see everything that had ever happened ever, and every person who had ever been ever. And I wanted to know all those people, and I wanted to be, I wanted that to be there, to be on the
Hmm.
moon and see everything and know everybody. And
Interesting
I woke up,
metaphor. Yeah.
yeah, and I woke up and I was really sad. I was really sad because I recognized I will never know everyone who ever lived. I will never know
Yeah.
everything that ever happened. I will never know. There are all these beings, these people that will never be in my experience. And I cried. I remember crying,
Mhm.
and then feeling a deep sense of sadness from then on,
Sure, sure. I
that
mean,
that would
that's,
never happen.
yep.
Yeah.
That, I
And
mean, I think we can all relate because I mean, there's so many ways of expressing that, but it's really that realization that, like in the real alternatives, is perhaps we'd like to try all the different permutations of trying to know and experience the peace that comes from true joining in the mind, and we try to do that on the level of form in countless ways. I mean, the most obvious one is sex, and then there's all kinds of community, and there's countless ways that we try to take a physical dream and make it have an experience of oneness, and yet they never really work. And even the semblance of it working only lasts momentarily. I mean, just the classic example of kids opening Christmas presents. It's like, well, I got what I wanted, and then an hour or a week or a year later, the toy's broken and discarded, and then the box that it came in and as a plaything, and, and it's like, okay, now what? But that's this endless search of trying to find something in the world that makes us happy. And the world was made to keep things separate and to keep our experience isolated so that we have differences and we have disagreements, and we can never, see eye to eye metaphorically. But that's the plan of the ego, and it takes a while for us to realize that there's nothing the ego is going to work. And as Davy Jones of the Monkees said, disappointment haunted all my dreams, right?
yeah.
I was also, but since you're mentioning the rabbit thing, it kind of reminded me of um, when I went to a weekly meeting in Ashland, Oregon, a decade or so ago. Um, there was a house I passed that had wooden shutters that were kind of permanent shutters. They didn't actually weren't functional, but they there was a half of a rabbit on either side of the window, and I thought, okay, no, what's that? What's up with that? Why would they have half a rabbit? And I thought, oh, and then it suddenly dawned on me, oh, splitting hairs.
Oh,
They're just splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs. That's funny. Oh my
I
gosh.
know I never went up to the door and knocked on the door and said, "Is that what you had in mind?" But that was my guess anyway.
Yeah, I think that's funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, uh, that was communicating to you. They were talking to you, Bruce, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you're the guy that likes the puns, and
But
there you
but
were.
but then the deeper humor in that is that that's what we're all doing, trying to follow ego's dictates, isn't it? We're splitting hairs, whether it's a hair on our head or the rabbit variety, and we're trying to divide and separate with everything that we do in the world. It's all about making differences real.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that can never happen. It can never be real.
Yeah.
And you know what was really interesting? When I found A Course in Miracles, once I started understanding that this was about our inherent oneness, the truth of what we are, that dream that I had, that thought that I had, that I could know everyone who ever was, became a reality to me. It absolutely became a reality to me because I recognized that I do know everyone who ever was, and everything that ever happened is already there. And I don't need to know the person or the personality. I don't need to talk to Genghis Khan or Mozart or uh, any of these. Not that I wanted to talk to those people. There were certain people I did want to talk to, but I realized that it's all one mind. And so there's nothing stopping me from having conversations with Leonardo da Vinci or,
Mhm.
uh, and by the way, the Da Vinci Museum, which they're building here in Pueblo, is it's moving along. They have
Oh, cool.
actual physical models of a lot of the things that he designed, the
Huh.
the machines that he designed. And
I'll
it's
have
going to
to
be here.
talk to
Yeah,
our mutual friend Dave Van Dyken. Maybe he'll go there and give me a little guided tour.
there you
Yeah.
go. There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm all set up now. Everything is running.
Okay,
Uh,
great. I just had
yeah.
one comment when you were talking about your vision of, talking with people, and historical figures and that sort of thing. I wonder if you or anyone else listening might remember, and I didn't watch all of them, but I remember the ones I watched I thought were really good. Years and years ago, Steve Allen had, I think what the show was called Meeting of the Minds, where he
Oh,
he he,
yes.
he basically got actors to dress up as these historical figures, and they'd sit around like a coffee table and discuss profound ideas and I thought and philosophies that like that was really cool. I mean, but it's like a neat concept and but we can but the take home is that we can do that in our mind anytime we want and draw upon in a group I was in the 70s called Creative Dynamics. We would use that principle and we called it the mastermind principle. It's like, why not just in your mind have a conversation with everyone that you've ever been inspired by, and essentially they're the better angels of our thoughts, so to speak, and have them be our advisory council or a mastermind group, and those are the terms we used, and and so essentially any we can literally, I think, from the course's perspective, use everyone everyone's right mind as our advisory council because everyone has a right mind. It just as we all have an ego mind. But if I can go into any situation preloaded, if you will, with thinking, well, I'm going to have my right mind work with your right mind because of the same, and let's see what we can tell each other and inspire each other to undo the belief in separation. Right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And they're here for us always.
Hmm.
You can talk to them. So they are here. Anything that ever was is and always will be. World
Exactly.
without end. Amen. Uh,
Yeah. Because it's all in the mind. Everything that we think we've experienced in a physical world, as even modern physics tells us, is happening in the mind.
exactly, exactly. And it always has been.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. I met Steve Allen
Oh,
and
you
his
did?
wife,
Huh.
Audrey, and because I was friends with his son
Huh.
up in Steamboat Springs. And
Okay.
So he was a student at uh, the college up there, and they came to visit him. And so I didn't get to talk to them or anything. They met us, hello, 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 and we're taking our son out to some fancy place for dinner, and that was that was it. But it was still like, wow, I met these people, and I always felt a certain uh, closeness because of that, and because their son, he was a very sweet man. He was a kid at the time. We were
Uh-huh.
young. We
Sure.
were very young, but anyway.
Uh-huh.
All
That's
right.
cool. That's cool. Huh.
Yeah. So, bypassing the rich and the famous. Anyway.
Yeah. Do you want to pick up where we left off?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Okay, so Ken is getting ready to go the week of August the 14th for 5 days to this Gethsemane monastery. Parallel to these arrangements, I was coming to some rather important personal decisions. The vision of my leaving everything behind, which had returned to me in my February delirium, had remained with me, always somewhere in my thoughts, and now in the beginning of July emerged to the forefront. Practically everything I owned, almost all of which had at one time been so very important to me, more like an extension of my being, now seemed absolutely meaningless, and for the first time began to feel like a heavy burden. As difficult as it was for me to believe, all my records and books, and even Jesus, which, remember, he had this huge portrait of Jesus that um, I imagine was as tall as him, that he took with him and had up on his wall. First he had it leaning against the wall, then he hung it up on the wall. But even that, okay, even Jesus, that now meant nothing. I no longer needed them. They were like old friends who had served me well, but from whom I had now grown. And so I decided to give everything away. But since they were friends, it was important that they be provided with suitable homes, and so many things were carefully distributed. I did keep a handful of books, my typewriter and clarinet, as they still felt important to me, but in time even these found new homes. Included too was my car, which I had only needed for driving the 20 miles to the hospital in which I worked. But when at the end of July I moved into a small, furnished apartment on the hospital grounds, the car was no longer necessary. It all suited me just fine, as I now hoped that I might find at last the inner quiet that had been so elusive, and my writing could therefore resume. But on that level, things continued just as before. So I counted the days until my trip to Gethsemane. In some way, and by the way, Gethsemane is the garden where Jesus went to pray before uh, the crucifixion, and Gethsemane was where he was arrested by the Roman soldiers. So it's quite a meaning to that term, the name of the monastery. So
In that
in some
narrative, huh?
way, the spiritual gap in my life was in part filled by a new involvement in my work at the hospital. Until the time of my illness, as I mentioned earlier, I kept my work and my quote unquote other life distinctly separate. I was conscientious and performed my job well, but was careful to keep God out of my work in any way, confining myself to isolated activities, thereby ensuring that I would be kept uninvolved with larger issues. This was motivated not only from inner necessity, but because of the clinical and political structure of the rather large and conservative state hospital. But shortly after the onset of the quote unquote crisis, the situation at the hospital changed radically. I followed along with the opportunities that presented themselves, thereby soon finding myself very much involved with important hospital activities and larger segments of the hospital staff. Thus, in a relatively short period of time, I developed close relationships with many people for whom I was able to be helpful both personally and professionally. As things evolved, this proved to be the beginning of a new pattern of living whose true implications did not become clear to me for yet another year. After I had definitely decided to visit the Trappists, I thought it might be a good idea, seeing as I was going to be in a Catholic place, if I became familiar with what went on at a Mass and what Catholicism was all about. And so for the remaining 3 weeks in July that I was in Poughkeepsie, I went to Mass about 3 times a week, including Sunday. I certainly did not expect what was awaiting me there. In a way I did not really understand, but something I could not deny. My attendance became more than a source of intellectual understanding. I felt something very important to be going on at the altar, and even from my seat in the rear of the church, I could feel a special presence with a capital S, special presence up front. The indifference which often characterized the face of the priest and the show-place atmosphere of the Sunday crowd, I much preferred the early morning daily masses, but still could not detract from the power of the Mass. I knew that God was around somewhere, and as an outsider, I felt excluded from what was occurring. It may be then that I first had the thought of becoming a Catholic, but if I did, I'm sure I quickly dismissed it from my mind. And that this reminds me of a story I heard Bob Rosenthal, and I can't think of who he was with, but it was somebody else from the course that uh, I'll have to find that story. Maybe somebody knows it.
Hmm.
But he and his friends were out, I guess, Christmas Eve, bopping around, and they decided to go to midnight mass at the cathedral. And they went to the mass. They were up in the balcony area, and they had never been to that. They didn't even know. And then it came time for communion, and he went and they took communion, which if you're not a Catholic, you do not take communion. It's just not allowed. But nobody is going to ask you for your card when you get up there. They're going to expect you come up there, you're there for a reason. So he went up and took communion, and he had a
Sorry, your card's expired, sir.
yeah, really. He had an experience, very, very enlightening experience from that. And I'll have to find that story because it was really pretty stunning. I heard him in one of his audiobooks um,
I
talking about it, and I'll have to
I think
find.
he might have put that in one of his later books. The first one he did, I've got his books in front of me, From Plagues to Miracles, um,
From
from
Never
Never
Mind to Ever
Mind to Ever
Mind.
Mind, From Fear to Eternity, and Loving One to One Love, and they're quite good. Um, and I was fortunate to do a number of interviews with Dr. Bob while he was still around. And they're also on acimblog.com and on my YouTube channel if anybody wants to watch those. And I really enjoyed those conversations, and I really felt privileged to have been able to spend that time with him when he was around, and he had some great ideas, and of course was super helpful in the brief tenure he had at the Foundation for Inner Peace, working with Tam Morgan as co-president. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That I mean, really, yeah, because I've listened to his audiobooks, and yeah, he's wow, what a guy. So
But he and Carol Howe are probably the two people that probably had, from a course perspective, had the most insights in terms of Bill Thetford's life too. And Carol's excellent book, Never Forget to Laugh. And it's just a biography about uh, Bill Thetford is just a real gem too, as you know. So yeah,
yeah, of course.
yeah,
We read his book also.
yeah,
Uh and wow, amazing, amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Uh let's see. All right, so oh man, that's not the same Rosenbaum. Of course that's probably not. Uh
I'll put a link to the conversations I had with Dr. Bob
okay,
in the
cool.
chat.
Thank you. That'd
Yeah.
be great. Uh all right. So um all right. So, at this time, I was also looking at some literature the Trappist had sent me, plus a pamphlet on Catholicism that I had picked up at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. It was, I think that might have been where he had that thing also, was at St. Patrick's, Bob Rosenthal.
Okay.
So, and as long as I read some of the material from a spiritual perspective rather than a dogmatic one, I had no difficulty. And I certainly had no intellectual problem with accepting Christ as the Messiah. That, of course, was not the issue for me. All that mattered was God and drawing more closely to Him. Although from the point of view of religion, I could see that Christianity was the pathway I was doing. I was doing what I was doing, not because I believed, but because things just naturally seemed to follow one another. My intellectual faculties were suspended. My intellectual faculties were suspended. And so, in essence, I was doing as I was told, following as I was being led, regardless of what I may have thought. That is, even if I even had stopped to think. So he is not uh uh he's not, he is like in his mind going way out of his comfort zone.
Which of course really is emblematic of the journey without distance that we do in our mind as we practice the Course's metaphysics is basically, and to not get blindsided by the fact that the ego is going to get extremely uncomfortable because it knows that we're shutting it down, kind of like the Nomad episode on the early Star Trek series, if you remember that, um, where
Yes.
Kirk basically convinces it that it's working against its own best interest, which kind of ties into today's workbook lesson. and and if I can just remember that, or I also watched a little documentary on some of the meaning behind Stanley Kubrick's classic 2001: A Space Odyssey, and when David Bowman is shutting down the HAL computer, it's sort of like, please, Dave, stop, Dave, but and the ego doesn't speak nearly as calmly and dispassionately, and sometimes it really it goes from suspiciousness to viciousness when we stop paying attention to it, which is another reason why the comparison with a spoiled 2-year-old brat, that just wants attention, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't care as long as it gets attention. But that's everyone's ego, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And there's no intellectual thought that can lead you to that.
right, right.
So, and so you do have to put down your intelligence, your intellectual being, and open with your spiritual being.
Right. And
And
it doesn't mean disregarding our intellect. It just means giving the use of it and letting it be directed by the Holy Spirit's promptings, which is, what's the purpose? Why am I using my mind? What am I trying to achieve with my mind? And if it's always some kind of warfare or even just subtle forms of making differences real, and denying the sameness of everyone we meet or think about, then we're engaged in a war, and the Holy Spirit says, if you want peace, you got to stop this warfare in your mind.
yeah,
Yeah,
there is no peace except the peace of God. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
only going to come from the one direction, and not the band with Harry Styles and Horan. I remember the rest of those guys, but uh, anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
So I was led to the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky, 50 miles south of Louisville. There we go. It's in Kentucky. I arrived there Monday morning, August 14th. Not really sure what I was doing there. That's my grandson's birthday. Probably never really found out what I was doing there, but I knew only after a very short time that I belonged there. I felt I had come home. All right. This first struck me that Monday afternoon while walking by the farm. I was accosted by a car driving for a look around. I waved to them in greeting as if welcoming them to my home. The monk's daily schedule felt perfectly natural, and I just as naturally began to follow it, attending all of the office, which are all the different prayer services that they do throughout the day. Though disappointed at first by the absence of the Latin and Gregorian chant that I was on that was on my record, particularly the Salve Regina, which I had come to love, the beautiful melodic chant that it replaced it soon made me forget all about it. They were the most heavenly sounds I had ever heard, and I would kneel at the balcony rail, not really understanding the words nor the structure of the office. I feel quietly at peace with God, tears frequently running down my face. I felt I was in a very holy place.
A quick
And that
aside,
for me,
I just let my subscription to Office lapse because I wasn't using it. So just
oh,
FYI.
oh, you did.
The Microsoft kind, that's what that
The
is.
Microsoft kind. Oh, that's my favorite thing. All right. All right. Do you want to read a little bit?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Let's see. Tuesday was the Feast of the Assumption, and it was a quote knockout unquote. I was almost literally knocked off my feet by the beauty and solemnity of the Mass, although I now can remember nothing of what went on. Words could not do justice to the rapturous beauty of the sounds I heard. And when communion was brought to the balcony, I wanted it so badly I could taste it. It took me all day to recover, and only during Vespers did I begin to feel like myself again. Synchronistically, School for Course in Miracles just started they're calling it Vespers, but it's really just a, a Zoom group that's on Sunday evenings that is, conversation, but a lot of quiet, introspective time. Interesting synchronicity. I actually attended a Vespers in a little retreat near Lake Chelan in Washington State a few decades ago, and that was my first exposure to what Vespers was. Anyway, I decided that next day I would speak to one of the monks. Accepting the introductory greeting when I arrived, I had not spoken a word to anyone, being silently alone with God. And it was now with no small amount of trepidation that I approached the guest master. We sat in his office, and I heard myself say to him, I think I want to become a Catholic. I feel perhaps I'm to become a monk. um, and that was in quotes. Ken says, I heard the words and knew they were true, but still a part of me could not believe what I had said. What did you just do? We spoke for quite some time, and by the end, I felt truly relaxed with the whole thing. It was becoming real. Before I left, I was able to speak with a novice master who, after hearing my quote story unquote, said a very helpful thing to me. Seeing as I had in many ways already been living a monk's life, he commented that perhaps my vocation might be to become a monk, but in the world. At the time, I did not fully understand what that meant. But anyway, he went on, I would have to wait at least a year after my baptism. That felt fine. I was going along pretty quickly, I thought, and there was no hurry to enter a monastery. I also met a monk who had recently organized a Jung study group, and I greatly enjoyed speaking with him. By the time I left, I felt much better. My life seemed to be picking up, and I was relieved to have experienced such a sense of belonging at the monastery. I bought myself a breviary, and then on the footnote it says a breviary is a book of psalms, hymns, prayers, etc., to be recited daily by priests and certain members of religious orders as part of the divine office, not to be confused with the Microsoft variety, right? Okay. Okay, so I bought myself a breviary, capital B, and began to say the office each day. My inner peace, however, did not return with me. So by the time I returned to New York, that aspect of my life had not changed. But as things were certainly happening and the intensity and meaningfulness of what I experienced at Gethsemane could not be denied, I felt it was only a matter of time until my inner life would stabilize as well. I knew I was not alone and that I was in good hands. And I'm going to refrain from making a pun with Allstate in it. Which I actually didn't refrain. Okay, so immediately upon my return, I spoke to one of the priests at the hospital. He asked me some questions, gave me a book to read, and said I could be baptized in about 2 or 3 weeks. Things were really moving now, and so they continued. I decided finally it was time that I left the hospital and gave official notice. I left plenty of time to complete the projects I had begun, to find and find a break. Oh no, find and break in my and break in my replacement as director, and to allow myself the time to catch my breath and prepare for what was to come. For beyond the day before Thanksgiving, the final day of work, I had no plans at all, except the general idea that I should live somewhere alone and hopefully at long last be able to resume my writing. Surprisingly, I felt quite comfortable with the indefiniteness of it all. But by this time, I knew God was with me and that He would show me the way. My life was completely in His hands, with nothing to stand in the way. I was free and was His child. Nothing else mattered. Do you want to pick up from there?
Sure. Yeah, this is really,
Actually, before you do, I'm going to comment on that last 3-word sentence. Nothing else mattered. To me, that's a top of the ladder mindset when we want nothing but forgiveness. We want nothing but the Holy Spirit's correction. We want nothing but to see and know and experience the peace that comes from letting go of uh, our battle to want to be separate and different.
exactly. And
Yeah.
also, that is a great song by Metallica.
Yeah.
And if
Nothing
you
else
have not,
mattered.
Nothing Else Matters.
Oh,
It,
matters. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, it is a
Yeah. Yeah.
great song by Metallica.
Okay.
And
Uh,
I think really I would like to hear that song.
okay. All right. I might have to
So
look it up too.
I'm
Maybe if
kind
you
of
find it,
thinking
put it in the chat or something.
I have
Oh,
it. I think I'm going to, let me see what happens.
okay. What I was going to say, in addition to what we just said about that sentence, it also appears in Richard Bach's Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, and I think that was the book anyway. But anyway, it was um, where Richard Bach was talking about when he was a kid. Um, he wanted, I think it was Don Shimoda asking him, you know, about learning to fly. Oh, I don't know. They were like cloud vaporizing or walking through walls or something. One of those things that Richard, the character in his Illusions book, was feeling very frustrated that he couldn't understand how Don Shimoda made it look so easy. And and then so Don Shimoda turned around and said, "Well, gee, when you learned about flying, you made it look easy, and you know, even though it's very challenging for a lot of people to learn how to fly, it's something to that effect." And then Richard's response was, "Well, yeah, of course, nothing else mattered."
Nothing else matters. Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's essentially not to try to have to start there, but when we realize, kind of like in the I keep coming back to that fourth section in chapter 31 of the text, um, the, the real alternative, where basically Jesus is telling us, if you get to the point where you've gone through all the different permutations or learn to generalize that and realize that everything that the ego suggests is the same dead end, literally and figuratively, you're going to then be fully motivated to want to learn the course and not to keep going back and forth and resisting. And we need to be, you know, just like the course suggests, infinitely patient with ourselves and not fight ourselves. And I think that's key. And just notice every little bit of resistance when it comes up becomes our classroom, to see how much we still balk at the idea of accepting perfect perfect peace, perfect oneness. And I've been watching a quick aside. I know we've only got a couple minutes left. I've been watching some of the um, post first season YouTube commentary reviews and analysis of the first season of Apple TV's Pluribus series. I don't know if you've watched
Oh
that or
my
not, but
gosh.
yeah, yeah. But it's pretty interesting. But and I was thinking this morning, I was comparing that with Matrix movies. And I was thinking, I mean, just about everything that we do in this world, um, our egos, including producers of great shows like this, um, inevitably, if we try to apply it on the level of form, it becomes a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Like in the Matrix movies, you know, if you take the red pill or the blue pill, you're going to see a horrific world, whether it's in the Matrix or beyond the Matrix, looking at the Matrix. Neither of those worlds in those movies are uh, are Disney or Hallmark worlds,
Right?
or
No, the real world is
let
so
alone
bad.
actually peaceful worlds, right? But and so in without too much, and I try not to do any spoiler alerts for people who haven't seen the whole first season of Pluribus or any of it. That whole premise is, well, let's take perfect oneness and try to apply it on the level of form, a one mind, which is really can only properly belong in the realm of non-duality. And let's try to bring that light to the darkness, as the Course would say, and make non-duality work within duality. Well, no, they're mutually exclusive. They're hermetically sealed. It's not going to happen. And the results are simultaneously, tragic and hilarious,
Yeah,
so.
and pretty horrific. There's a lot of sacrifice involved
Oh
in
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that idea.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the real world. This is
Right.
not,
Right. Right.
and the oneness that they're experiencing is not the oneness of letting go of the ego. That it's having the ego ripped away from you, and you just left with um this knowledge of being that is not who you really are. And so,
Exactly.
neither of those, situations are ideal. And that's how the ego interprets, hey, if you bring about oneness, look what's going to happen. Oh my goodness.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Pretty
oh,
crazy stuff, huh? Yeah.
pretty crazy stuff. Well,
Well,
I'm
anyway,
going to close
thank you.
out the YouTube.
Okay. And
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna